Welcome back to RGR. I'm Ryan, and we are going wrong, and I say we because Dan Harms is back. You guys may have met him for the very first time on the live streams for the actual draft, but Dan, welcome back. I'm pretty excited about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I was so overwhelmed by the amount of people we got inside watching during that draft, during the draft, and that was one of the coolest experiences I've had doing this. So I can't thank the fans enough and the viewers that came in and watched that. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I have to say I had a great time as well, and I think everybody got a lot out of it. I mean, I'm wrong about some things, especially right off the cuff, but man, there was a lot of information thrown around, and you were a big part of it. We're going to follow that up today, folks, because if you haven't gone back, pre-draft, Dan did a bunch of film reviews about different players, and this is a piece that we're going to show you in the background about Willie Gay, and we're going to talk about him as really, I wanted to start with him in terms of not going right to Clyde Edwards-Helaire because he's so out in the forefront. A first-round pick is going to do that. But I actually think of all the draft picks that Willie's got the best chance to actually contribute in 2020. Do you see somebody else, or am I about on square with that?
I would say it's Clyde outside of Willie Gabe, just because I think he's going to end up taking over that spot from Damien Williams. He just does so many things better in that aspect. But we're talking especially from a defensive standpoint, we brought in a first round caliber talent, in my opinion, with Willie Gay, and you get him in the second round, and some think he may even fall into the third round for maybe the mid third round, but still, you're getting a guy that was great in pass coverage in college. Didn't have a whole lot of it on tape just because of his off field issues, but he said all the right things in his interviews, and the Chiefs love that about him. He's one of those guys that owns up to things, and he's going to be in there working every day, and that's something that this team really wants to build around, especially on the defensive side.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he can walk in and get slotted into the wheel. Nothing against Ben Neiman or even DOD, who I think are decent backups, especially Ben. He put in so many snaps. I mean, I think it was 490 something coverage snaps last year. That's a lot for a backup. So, I mean, you got to give him credit for that. And I'm not trying to disparage him in any way. There's a lot of folks that think that I'm trying to run him down by saying that Willie's going to get in front of him, but I just think that's the way it's going to be. But I will say this. If he does walk into Will, the question for me is going to be, they still want to play a ton on nickel. And how soon is the transition going to be from Hitch and Wilson to Hitch and Gay?
Yeah, for me, it would have to be almost immediate, just because he may not know the system fully when he comes in day one, but we're talking about a guy who's got the instincts and the sideline to sideline speed that they have been seriously lacking in the linebackers, on those linebackers. So I get it. And Wilson, he played probably as well as anybody expected him to last year, and he was in there in those nickel sets and doing exactly what he could. But he's just not that. He's not that kind of guy. He doesn't have the speed and what they really need, the ability to cover tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. And that's something that Willie Gay is going to provide immediately, even if he doesn't necessarily know the ins and outs of the defense yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely with you. And folks, if you don't understand exactly how to visualize this, think of it this way. Reggie Ragland was down here in terms of pass coverage athleticism. Reggie's great downhill. We all know how I feel about him. But he just doesn't get out and run with some of those backs. I mean, quite frankly, then it was Wilson.
Yeah.
And then it was Hitchens. Willie Gay's up here, folks. Yeah. That's the kind of athlete that we're talking about. And that's why I think eventually, and I'm really keen to see, I agree with you. I think it's best for him to get into that nickel package right away, because I'd rather live with some mistakes and get him into it by the time the midseason rolls around than really hold him back. Do you think that that's what they do? I think we agree.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult just because of this unique offseason. I don't know if they're going to necessarily want to rush young guys into the spotlight that early on the field. I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the only one that's going to get the benefit of that doubt, just because he was in a very pro-style spread offense last year with LSU, and he's going to come in and be able to kind of learn these things extremely quickly and take over at the running back position. But for linebackers, and I think that having Hitch there is going to definitely help. I think that the transition for Willie Gay is going to be Will, and then eventually, he's going to take over as the Mike linebacker. That's the ideal situation, I think. So we're going to have Willie Gay step in, and it's very possible that he sees time early. Maybe it's more sparse than just immediately in there as a 100% every down backer. But I think giving him those reps early is really going to be necessary to his development.
I agree with you, and I think it's going to pay off. And we're looking at some footage, folks. Next, I want to say it'll probably go up over the weekend, but it might be Monday's videos, is what Dan had done on Willie before the draft. And you're going to see a lot of what it brings, and it'll roll here as we're talking. I'm not too concerned about it, but when you think about getting him up to speed, we saw, I mean, the coverage deficiencies at the linebacker level last year clearly wasn't enough to keep them from winning a championship.
Nope.
So you have to think that they're going to be able to battle the run. I do feel that with Pennell's return, that definitely protects Hitchens and Wilson a little bit. And I think with the addition of Gay, again, even if he takes a while to learn the defense, I think they're still better off in terms of having a man in position that can do what they need him to do.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I don't think he's necessarily bad in the run game. There's just some things that he needs to learn in terms of sometimes you need to take on a block to open up somebody else. You don't have to make every play yourself, and that's more of a mental aspect that a lot of young players need to kind of tune into. And everyone wants to make those plays. They want to be the guy that makes all the tackles and all the things like that. So in learning the nuances of run defense, sometimes you have to take on a block to open up someone behind you in order to get that stop that you really want to get. So, yeah, I think that they're going to be able to stop the run regardless, at least much better than they were at the beginning of last season and the season before that. And I think that the Spags has established the defense that he wants to utilize and be able to stop the run first, and then have guys like Willie Gay that can cover out at linebacker to come in after that, and maybe we'll see some different lineups and different formations and different packages that he can throw out there with Willie Gay, because he's a unique player with his athletic ability. So I'm excited to see what they do with him.
And I like the way that you put that too, because it's an old adage. Gunther Cunningham used to say, you have to stop the run first. You have to take away their will to run, and then get yourself in a situation where you could tee off and pass rush. And I think there are elements of that even in the modern day. But as they replace their linebackers, and in a second we need to talk about the future as well, you replace the linebacker level and get them more athletic, that actually protects some of the things that the corners have to do, especially when Spags ran 46.9 or something percent zone last year. And so there's some overlap there with some of the outside boundaries that you have to try to get the linebackers to get to fill in those zones. I think more athleticism there protects the corners as well.
Yeah, before we came into the 2019 season, actually, I was talking about how they needed to upgrade the linebacker position because it helps both aspects equally. You're talking about linebackers that need to fill gaps properly in the run game, but can also have the athleticism and speed to help the underneath and the intermediate areas, so the corners aren't overstretching and the safeties aren't overstretching. So when we're talking about an entire defense, you can't have a weakness really anywhere, and the linebacker core was so deficient in terms of athleticism and speed that it was negatively impacting the way that the defense played in the back end, even up front. We saw in 2018 they got a bunch of pressure on the quarterback, but teams were still able to just dissect the defense in many different ways. So I think that we're seeing a shift in the way that linebackers have to prepare and be athletic in the NFL and in college. Guys have to be able to be multifaceted in terms of running downhill, with being able to read everything as it comes about, and then also being able to drop back and cover more athletic linebackers and running backs out of the backfield. So it's the position itself has been in kind of a changing dynamic, and I think that the athleticism that Willie Gay brings, and that we're seeing more athletic linebackers. As Isaiah Simmons is really one of those multifaceted guys that can do it all and play anywhere, and that's kind of the way that linebacker is going in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think it's going to continue. When we talk about the future too, this is this season. Get Willie accustomed. I could see them selecting another linebacker next year. There's a nice crew from what I've taken a quick look at so far.
Oh yeah.
So there's options there, but back to Ben Niemann, because a lot of folks are high on him, and they should be. I can eventually see people that it will be Willie and Ben Niemann as your nickel. Once Anthony Hitchens has played out his contract, there's no getting rid of Anthony Hitchens. You can't save yourself anything. It doesn't do you no good. So he will be here. But when that contract expires, I could see Ben Niemann and Willie Gay be in there, so long as the progression is average even for a rookie. He doesn't have to be spectacular.
No, that's the biggest thing is we've seen the linebacker play not be average, and we don't really have much of a feel for that in that position. So when we talk about guys like Hitchens and Wilson, we talk more about what they provided in terms of what they could provide, not overall being up to standard in the NFL. And unfortunately, that's just what the linebacker position was. We saw, Derek Johnson before, he was doing it all, and then
Yeah, and then
yeah,
some.
and then exactly. When he got Reggie Ragland in, he was able to teach him some things, and we saw flashes from Reggie in his first season with Derek Johnson that we thought, maybe he could take over, and then Johnson left. In comes Hitchens, and then there was that disconnect with those linebackers. Everyone thought that Hitchens was going to be the guy, to come in and get that linebacker crew, and it didn't work out the same way. He didn't have the athleticism and leadership. So Ben Niemann was mostly the dime backer and nickel backer last year. He played a lot of coverage snaps. He barely was on the field for running down. So getting somebody with that experience also for Willie Gay to help teach, because I don't think that Hitchens is going to be able to do that. So you get them on the field at the same time, then he can also rub off on him, and they can actually rub off on each other, because Willie Gay's got those natural instincts, and not necessarily that Ben doesn't. It's just I feel like it's more of a process for him. And Willie just more of a read and react kind of guy. I mean, he's not ready. Willie Gay, excuse me, is more of a read and react kind of guy. So they could really help benefit each other in that aspect.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. Willie he is kind of see ball, get ball right now, and I think he will be for a bit. And Ben's actually really cerebral. Coach's kid, came from a leadership position on his college team. And it's interesting that you say that, because Anthony Hitchens is the green dot. He's who's calling the defense this season. That's not going to change unless he's injured. So I agree with you. I think that the nice thing is, particularly when it comes to the nickel packages, Hitchens is going to be on the field on first down, second down if they're running. Willie's going to be able to stand on the sidelines with Ben Niemann and go through what they need to do in the nickel position. No matter who actually goes out on the field, they'll be able to kind of co-conspire there and get Willie up to speed.
Yeah, and that's really the most important thing for this year. And when we looked at this draft class, a lot of it has impact in 2021, and they really were forward thinking in their aspect. They brought 20 guys back out of last year's starters, and then they were like, look, we have we can really draft for 2021 with keeping in mind that some of them might be able to help this year. And if they can, that's absolutely great. We're bringing back most of the guys from, the Super Bowl winning team. So the foundation is there. Anything that they get out of this current draft class is just a bonus. And having a guy like Willie Gay, who could potentially end up being a 3-down starter for them at the end of this year, would be amazing.
Yeah, and that sets you up, again, something to build around for the future. Now, folks, this is Willie Gay today. It'll change pretty quickly, I feel, once they get into camp, and we'll revisit that. There's a lot going on over. All of Dan's stuff is at Arrowhead, guys, and so you can check that out there. Dan, if you have a particular article that's up right now, let them know.
I just finished my Precarious Pt1 review. It's up on Arrowhead, guys, right now. I actually think that's a really good value in the 7th round. They were able to come back and get him. It's really this piece was about the fit at corner, what they wanted to do on the outside. Both him and L'Jarius Sneed are 6 foot or above. They're long and they're physical, and that's really what they want to do. They want to play the press man and get out there with their length and really disrupt with receivers in their stems to really get them off their game. So there's not a whole lot of tape on him. He's out of Tulane, so there's a little disconnect with the level of competition. But I was able to go back and watch them against Ohio State, so I had a little bit of a feel for what he was going to do, at least in the aspect of be physical and be able to run routes with the receiver. So I like what he's got the raw attributes to do, and I'm interested to see how Spags gets what Spags will do when he gets his hands on him. So you can go at Arrowhead, guys, and read that one right now. And then I will have Jarvarius. Oh, I forgot his name again. Javarius Davis. I just talked about him before we started this, and then I forget his name. So yeah, Javarius Davis will be up on the site very soon. So yeah, go ahead and check those out.
Cool. And I think we'll follow up on those guys next time. And then I want to get into L'Jarius Sneed because I think he is, after really, probably the guy that I think has the best opportunity to contribute in 2020 of this draft class, free agent class, whatever you want to call him. But cool. Well, thanks for your time tonight. I know this was kind of last minute, but it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I always have fun, man. It's always I'm usually available, especially after my daughter's in her crib. So
right, mine talk now, so it's always troublesome. But you know, it is what it is. Folks, thanks for watching us today. Check everything Dan does out at Arrowhead. Guys, keep going for Locked On Chiefs. We have all kinds of stuff going on, crossovers and whatnot. And we'll be back here with you again over the weekend and next week. Thanks for watching us today, and we'll check you next time.